Good afternoon and welcome to the Planning Committee of Mid Sussex here today on the 7th of September. Before we start, I just want to make a statement which is that I'm to remind members that you should stick to the agenda and not stray from planning agenda. And if you do stray, I will consult with my legal officer and Steve King, who's my senior planner, to make sure that you have strayed, and then I will ask you to go back onto strict planning. And if you've failed to do that or left to ask you, I'm not going to let you speak, okay? Just not trying to stifle debate, but we've got to go into strict planning reasons. Okay, so I'm going to go to item 1 on the agenda, and that's to receive apologies for absence. That's Councillor Kenny and Sweatman. And item 2 is to receive declarations of interest of any member on the agenda. Can members indicate via their mic unit, please? Nope, thank you. And to agree by general affirmation the minutes of the meeting we had on the 3rd of August. If you agree, I will sign it after the... Okay, are we all happy with that? Okay, thank you. Item 4 is considering the items that I agree to take as urgent business. I do have none, so we'll now go straight into the main reason we're here for today. And it's item 5 is DM 231174 Haywards Heath Rugby Club, Whiteman's Green in Cookfield. Again, you probably read the report, well, I hope you read the report. It's on our land. And that's the reason why it's here. It would have been delegated otherwise. So this is yours, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just before I start the presentation, just direct members' attention to the update sheet on this one. Received the comments of the Council's landscape consultant, but in summary, they have no objection to the application, subject to conditions regarding hard and soft landscaping. And just one other point, it's not on the update sheet, but as a general update, there is a new version of the MPPF that was published a couple of days ago, but the only change relates to matters concerning onshore wind farm development, so it doesn't impact in any way anything that's in the reports before you today. So just to run through this application. Application seeks full planning permission for the replacement of the existing pavilion at the Whiteman's Green Recreation Ground. So this is the application site here, outlined in red. So say Whiteman's Green Recreation Ground on the south of the Whiteman's Green Road there. Cookfield Village across to the east here. This is the existing pavilion building that's proposed to be demolished, and this is the existing car park that serves that building, and this is the existing access point that serves both the pavilion car park, and it also serves a number of residential properties further down the south here. And as the Chairman says, it's before committee because this is all on MSDC land. So in terms of what's around the site, that's all set out in section 9 of the committee report. The whole site is in the countryside. It's also in the High Weald AOMB, although clearly this is a managed landscape, well-established recreation ground with a number of rugby pitches to the south here and across to the west, and other pitches all over here to the east. And it's just an aerial image that shows the layout of the site. So as I say, that's the existing pavilion that's proposed to be demolished. That's the existing car park, and you can see the layout of all the existing pitches to the south, east, and across to the west. And just in terms of some of the policy constraints, the green hatching, that denotes the High Weald AOMB, so that washes over the whole of the site. So that's the existing pavilion again. And then the blue hatching here is the conservation area in Cookfield, so the Whiteman's Green conservation area. So that's the heritage asset that's referred to in the committee report. And also the report refers to the planning history that's relevant here. That's in section 8. So there was a previously approved plan for the demolition of the existing clubhouse and a replacement clubhouse, which would have been here, and new car parking. And that was approved in June 2019. That consent has now expired, but it is relevant that was determined under the same development plan background as we've got now, so the same district plan, same neighbourhood plan. So that was the proposed location as previously approved. And these were the previously approved elevations of the new clubhouse building. So 2-storey pitched roof, brick on the ground floor and timber cladding at the first floor level. So what's before us now is very, very similar, and that's described in section 10 of the committee report. So as I say, it proposed the demolition of the existing building, replacement pavilion located here, new car parking to the east of the building, including 2 coach parking spaces, and a new storage facility building up here in the northeast corner of the site. The proposal would use the existing access. And these are the proposed elevations. So in terms of the scale of the building and the external design is very, very similar to the previous approval. That's the proposed ground floor of the pavilion. So as you can see, number of changing rooms, physiotherapy room, storage, main entrance here, and toilets. There's also an internal lift to provide access to the first floor, as well as these external stairs located at either end of the building. At first floor level, got a function room, social area, office, toilets. There's the lift. And this is the external balcony area on the west elevation that would face across to the main pitches on the recreation ground. So the external materials are set out in the committee report, but they're proposed to be more modern style than the previous approval. So it's panelling that's proposed. The application shows 118 car parking spaces in total. As I've mentioned, the 2 coach parking spaces. And the various sustainability features of the proposed building are set out in paragraph 10.8 of the committee report. These are just the elevations of the storage building, so quite a modest single-storey structure. And just some photos to give you some context of the site. So these are taken from the south of the site within the recreation ground, looking up at the existing pavilion, which is here. We'll see from the close-up photos that it's not a building of any architectural merit, and it's past its sell-by date, basically, in terms of its use. That's the broad location of the proposed replacement pavilion over here to the west. So just other views of the existing pavilion. So that's a view from the east of the existing building, and that's taken from the road. It's fairly well screened from the road, but this is one of the gaps that you can see through. So that's the existing building again, and the existing car parking. And finally, that's taken directly opposite the access into the site. So that's the access, then you go into the car park. And this is a view looking across the site. So that's the existing pavilion. So you're looking westwards, so the replacement pavilion would be in that general location there. So I'll just quickly go back to the site plan. In terms of the assessment of the application. The legal framework of how the application should be assessed is set out in paragraph 11 of the committee report. The assessment follows on from that. In terms of the principle, that's dealt with in paragraph 12.2. The site is in the countryside, but as is set out in the committee report, there's clear policy support for the proposal, and it is relevant that there was a previous planning permission granted under the same planning policy background, so that we think the principle is clearly established. In terms of the heritage asset impact, the Whiteman's Green conservation area, as we saw on the slides, is to the east. That's about 230 odd metres away. Policy DP 35 in the district plan seeks to protect the setting of conservation areas. The main difference, as we've set out in the committee report, between the previously approved scheme and the current scheme solely relates to the external materials for the proposed building. So previously, as I've said, it was brick and timber, now proposed to be cladding. Officers are satisfied that with a condition to control the detail of that cladding, in particular the colour of it, that the proposal will preserve the setting of the conservation area. Design matters, they're dealt with in paras 12.19 onwards. As I've said, site is in the AONB, and we've now received the comments of the landscape consultant, who raises no objection. Officers' view is that the design of the building is satisfactory. It's an appropriate scale in relation to the surrounding recreational use of the land, and again that's the same assessment as on the previous application. Residential amenity, Environmental Health Officer has no objection to the application, and the conditions that are proposed now are the same conditions that were proposed on the previous 2019 consent. So with those in place, there should be no adverse impact on neighbours. In terms of highways, the Highway Authority have no objection to the application, and are satisfied with the level of car parking. The application does propose removal of 12 trees to the west of the site. Those members that have been out to the site will see that they're planted at either side of the access road, but they would be removed. But that's the same as, again, the previously approved scheme. Those trees aren't worthy of a preservation order, and we can require additional planting within the site to compensate for that. So overall, officers' view is that the principle of the development is acceptable and subject to conditions regarding the external materials of the building and other matters. The application is acceptable and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Thank you. Hopefully you should have a copy of the submission which I sent out by email. Hailsleys Rugby Club is a community amateur sports club. We are wholly run by volunteers. This project that we are undertaking is estimated to cost 2.25 million, of which we've raised just over 1.9 million. And if we were to get planning permission, we'd be looking to start construction very soon with a view to delivery by autumn 24. In 2006, MSDC undertook a facilities audit in which they found that there was a lack of mixed-use changing rooms up at Whiteman's Green. This facility will address that issue. There are probably around 2,000 people, including participants, parents and carers, who undertake sport at Whiteman's Green. That's not just rugby, that's football, American football, cricket and athletics, as well as recreational users. This will benefit all of those. It is key that we get people playing sport, that this is inclusive. So we are trying to put out a place which will be an appropriate environment for girls and ladies sport, but it's also been designed with accessibility for disabled users taken into account. And last week we launched something called Rugby for All, which is a fund which provides for people who are suffering financial hardship to make sure their children or adults can play sport. We've always been a community hub. We've hosted events such as the Jubilee Beacon, the Coronation Picnic, local markets, Cookville Music Festival, Easter Walking Race, as well as MSDC's Play Days, MSDC's Men's Wellbeing and Health programme. This building gives us the opportunity to construct a building that will be modern, forward-thinking, sustainable facility with state-of-the-art energy efficiency and low running costs, meaning that the building will be far more energy efficient than your average new build house. So to conclude, we took this project before the MSDC Grants Committee. It scored 12 out of 12, measured and benchmarked against MSDC criteria, aims and policies. So for those reasons, I would ask that you grant permission so that we can build a sports facility which will be the best in the county, if not the southeast of England. Thank you.
I've got to take 30 seconds. The Anstey and Stapleford Parish Council, who just the other side of the road, they are in support of this application. And in the absence of a ward councillor to speak, I'm going to speak first. Because if you look at the thing, I'm just the other side of the road. My ward is. I think this is an excellent facility. I was very pleased the committee gave us permission in June of 2019. This is exactly what the vision for Mid Sussex have. I'm very thankful, Mr. Herbert, that you've managed to raise the funds that you have to get this far. It's an exemplary, and it's much better than the very first iteration we ever saw. And for that reason, I shall recommend it for approval. Does anybody else wish to speak? Any other rugby players amongst us? Councillor Hemwood.
I am not a rugby player.
I know you're not.
Thank you very much. I think it's great energy efficient, but I'm thinking this is an exposed area, a roof, and I'm very much hoping that the committee will take on board renewable energy schemes. Obviously seems ideal for photovoltaic tiles. So I would like, if that were the committee, would recommend that this is one step forward. It's going to be built from new. And I would hope that they would use renewable energy schemes such as photovoltaics.
Yep, they are. If you read the report that Mr. Herbert sent out,
I did.
the fourth,
He says renewable energy, but he doesn't say what kind.
it says solar energy functionable.
Solar energy, okay.
Yep. But I think you've also got to, that they are a charity, and as and when they get the money, I'm sure that I'm getting some nods that they will include that in the build. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Additionally, normally we would have a list of the conditions because I'm quite concerned, and our planning officer has already mentioned, but under the conservation officer, under her report on page 43, it specifically mentioned a condition to approve further details of facing and roofing materials. And we don't have any condition listed. I know the planning officer said there would be a condition, but I just wanted to make sure that was, I don't have any conditions in my report.
If you go to page, if you can get page 17 on your document, and 12.15 and 12.16 covers the comments that the Emily Wade, our conservation officer.
Conservation officer, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Mr. King's going to say something as well. Could you switch off your, thank you.
Yeah, in terms of conditions regarding materials, that condition 2 covers that, so it requires samples of the materials and finishes for the facing materials and fenestration as well. So that's condition 2 in the report.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, my Vice Chairman, Councillor Kennedy.
I'm just very pleased to see this. I wasn't on the committee when the previous application was before it, but Hayward Heath is one of the most successful junior rugby clubs in the South East, and I think it's quite natural they want to improve their facilities in this way, particularly with the growth in the women's game. And I think on top of that, as we've heard already, it's going to be an excellent asset for the community. I'm very supportive of this.
Are you happy to second that?
I'm very happy to say.
Thank you. Right, I have no other speakers, so can you indicate you're either for it, against it, or abstain in the normal way? And can you vote now, please? I've got a full house.
Yeah.
I have 10 members and 10 all voted, so that has gone through. Thank you very much. You can breathe now. Okay. '67, 27 Knoll Rise, Burgess Hill. This is yours, Rachel, and I had hoped that everybody has visited this site as well, please.
Again, I'd like to refer members to the update sheet, which makes reference to a couple of letters that were received following the writing of the committee report, and it makes reference to new issues which weren't summarised in the committee report. So this application is proposing a single-storey side and rear extension, and it is proposing the construction of dormer windows to the front and rear elevations, and a roof enlargement which will facilitate 3 bedrooms and a bathroom in the loft area. And amended drawings have been received, as well as a design and access statement that was amended parts 1 and 2 to reflect the changes for the reduced size of the dormer windows front and rear. So, starting with the first slide is the location plan, and you can see the red-edged boundary around the site and the application dwelling within its context of the road, and that it's a semi-detached dwelling, and then it backs onto a wooded area. The third slide is the proposed site plan. And this slide shows the proposed development from an aerial view. The dotted line shows the position of the former garage, which is just here. And there is existing parking on the front garden and the driveway here. And the hard surfacing is proposed along the side. There is hard surfacing currently in situ in this position, and to the rear of the proposed extension. This is the proposed extension here, which is at the side and to the rear. And you can see the roof enlargement. There's the hipped roof as existing, and this is going out into a barn hipped roof. And you can see a front dormer window, 2 roof lights, and a rear dormer as well. The next slide is the existing ground floor slide. This slide shows the ground floor layout of the property, and on this slide, the other 5 properties shown, you can see that there are 4 existing rear extensions here, here, here and here. So we're now moving on to the existing roof plan slide, and this shows the profile of the existing roof, which is a hipped roof here. Slide 6 shows the proposed loft plan, and it shows the 3 bedrooms proposed here and the bathroom here. It also shows dimensions of the proposed rear extension, showing the width, the depth, which goes to the side, and the depth from the rear elevation outwards. This slide, slide 7, shows the proposed front elevation. You can see the proposed dormer window here, the 2 roof lights, the roof enlargement here, which is going from the hipped roof into a barn hipped roof, and you can see the faded out, because it's set back, proposed extension to the rear, which is coming out at the side. The proposed side elevation also shows you the extensions. It shows you the roof enlargement to the side with a window with obscure glass at first floor. It shows you the front dormer window and the rear dormer window and the proposed rear and side extension. These windows here are also shown to have obscure glass. The proposed rear elevation shows the proposed rear extension and the proposed rear dormer window with the roof enlargement here. It also shows dimensions of the extension in terms of height and width, and it shows materials. It also shows, it shows quite a lot actually, this slide. It shows the distance from the boundary, the shared boundary with number 29, that there's 1 metre separation distance between the shared boundary and the proposed rear dormer, and it shows that the roof heights of the existing rear extension at number 29 is the same as that proposed at the application property. And here we have the proposed street scene. This is the application property here, and it shows on this street scene that this is an identical match to number 31, which currently exists here. And you can also see from this street scene that number 33 has a front dormer window, number 29 has a front dormer window, and number 25 has a front dormer window. And these are my officer photographs. This is the application property, the front elevation, and you can see number 29 here adjoining the application property with the front dormer in situ. You can see the hard surfacing already there in situ for parking, and the driveway here to the left. You can see at number 25 the existing dormer window, and at number 31 and number 33 you can see exactly what is being proposed at the application property. So the front dormer, the 2 roof lights, the roof enlargement comprising a barn hipped roof with a rear dormer window there, and at number 33 the existing dormer. These are again my officer photographs and the rear elevation of the application property, which from this photograph you can see the existing rear extension at number 29, that it butts up to the shared boundary of the application property, and you can see the rear dormer in situ at number 29. You can see the boundary on the shared boundary between the application property and number 29 here, the existing extension at number 29 and existing planting here. And this is the boundary on the other side of the property, which is number 25, and this is just at the point on the rear elevation of the application property here, and that's number 25 there. This photograph just shows you the rear of the rear garden of the application property with the wooded area to the rear and the vegetation, and the annex that was granted planning permission in 2021. Not 1921. I know, I've gone back in time. Yes. So moving on. The recommendation is that planning permission be approved subject to conditions listed in Appendix A. So the main issues for consideration are set out in my officer report. However, to sum up, the principle of the development is acceptable. This is a householder planning application for extensions on a property in the built-up area boundary as defined in the district plan. Members will be aware that legislation requires the application to be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material circumstances indicate otherwise. The executive summary and conclusion in my report summarises the application proposal and planning issues. The main planning issues for consideration are design and whether the proposed development is in keeping with the existing property and street scene, and impact on residential amenity. In terms of amenity, this is whether the proposed development will cause significant harm on the living conditions for the occupants of adjoining properties, having regard particularly to overlooking and a loss of privacy, outlook and overshadowing in terms of a loss of daylight and or sunlight. These issues have been fully assessed in my Officer Committee report and considered in the light of criteria contained within relevant planning policy in the adopted development plan. Essentially, the proposed development, when viewed from the street scene, will match that which exists at number 31 Knoll Rise. Some dormer windows at the rear can be constructed without the need for planning permission, and there are a lot of examples of rear dormer windows on properties in the locality. While the proposed rear dormer window is large, it will not be dominant in the street scene, and there are no public vantage points where it can be seen. It will not change the profile and ridge height of the existing roof. The proposed side and rear extension will be set back from the principal elevation of the property, and it is single storey. It would appear subservient in the street scene and would not undermine the character and appearance of the existing property. There is no significant harm resulting from the proposed development to the living conditions of adjoining properties by reason of loss of privacy, outlook and loss of daylight and or sunlight. The scheme is considered to be acceptable and there are no planning grounds to refuse this application. It is therefore recommended that permission be granted. That brings my presentation to an end, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We do have two speakers. Geraldine Miller, who's speaking on behalf of Jane Ballard.
To request the application be rejected to the proposed application in its current format. Firstly, I'd like to express my gratitude for the minor amendments that have been made to the plans, although they do not align with the desires of our neighbourhood. Multiple residents, myself included, continue to express reservations regarding the scale and overall impact of this proposed development on our established community. It is worth noting that more than 40 objections have been raised by residents and over 5 formal complaints have been submitted. Unfortunately, I believe there has been a lack of engagement regarding any site visits during the planning process, which has missed the opportunity to gauge valid concerns, perspective of affected residents. I've even taken steps to protect our properties by instructing a surveyor to initiate the process of implementing a party wall agreement, as it is apparent that due to the size and scale of the development, 2 party wall agreements would be required. Mrs. Ballantyne's submission includes the following specific points: loss of light, noise, design principles, encroachment on boundary, overbearing size, impact on livability, precedent and overdevelopment. In addition to these concerns, I wish to address some issues related to the planning process itself. There seems to be a discrepancy concerning boundary principles, which could potentially lead to boundary disputes. The boundary principle differ from the boundary principles of adjoining properties in the immediate neighbourhood. Additionally, it has come to my attention that other properties in the vicinity with larger rear dormers have been referenced in support of this application. 19 and 31 Knoll Rise have a full width dormer, approximately 7 metres. However, I believe it noteworthy that these dormers should not set a precedence of the proposed development, as my immediate neighbours at 21 and 33 that abut 19 and 31 do not have head height dormer windows to the rear that would be impacted, and as such any argument based on the existence of these dormers is not applicable to the current situation.
Can I ask you to conclude in one sentence, please?
It is in the interest of maintaining the aesthetic and architectural coherence of the neighbourhood. I made a polite request through our caseworker. I asked that the rear dormer of the property be scaled down to match the revised plan for the front dormer.
I'm now going to call Councillor Anne Eves, who's the local ward councillor, who kindly has submitted a, thank you very much, you're the first ever to do that. Now, for the members of the public watching, whether on YouTube or up in the gallery, Councillor Eves hasn't got a timer against her name. She can speak, but as we all know, we want to go home tonight. Thank you.
Leyland's ward. These bungalows are on a pleasant hill backing onto the Network Rail Nature Reserve. I've had to devote more attention to these 4 houses, 27 to 33 Knoll Rise, than any other group of houses in my ward. Firstly, I would stress that this is not a detached house, it's a bungalow and it's a semi. As such, one might expect there to be some concern for symmetry, and I refer you to DG 49. All extensions should consider their impact on neighbouring properties. The application is for a large dormer window at the front, an even larger one at the back, and a wraparound barn roof extension visible from the street. The dormers are both too big. They're out of character with other bungalows in this row. The development would be too big, overbearing, and not in keeping with the street scene. The lack of symmetry at front and back makes it unsightly, despite it being reduced in size following planning officer intervention. The extension overwhelms the original dwelling and is not in keeping with the design of the original dwelling. Again, this is DG 49. A single-storey self-contained building was erected in the back garden of the applicant in 2022. Taken together with this extension, the footprint would take up 50% or more of the plot and lead to considerable loss of garden amenity for future inhabitants. This is contrary to DG 46, external amenity space, and DG 49, extension should not result in a significant loss to the private amenity area of the dwelling. If for no other reason, you should reject this application because of encroachment onto the neighbour's land. I haven't, by the way, seen the update sheet, so I don't know what that says. But 29's existing extension does not abut the boundary, as the planning officer said. It stops 1 foot short, 30 centimetres short of the shared boundary. But 27's planned extension before you today will be only 10 centimetres, 4 inches from the boundary. The neighbours are well informed on this because it has recently happened between bungalows 31 and 33. Number 29 has had to employ a party wall surveyor, as you've heard, at her own expense. Number 33 points out that having a 30 centimetre gap between the 2 extensions is more respectful of the neighbour. The impact of the height of the extension is diminished thereby, and I can see more trees at the back, she says. If the applicant wants to access their own wall, they can do it without needing to come through the neighbour's land, and the considerable amount of water that comes off the roof will fall mostly on the applicant's land, so that 30 centimetres makes a big difference. So it's not true to say that this is exactly the same as house number 31 in that respect, and house number 31 doesn't have a great big bungalow in the back window, in the back garden. The back dormer would cause loss of privacy to number 29's back garden and loss of light to her back bedroom and her living room. No one, by the way, seems to have come round to 29 to see the possible loss of light and access it. This is contrary to DG 45, privacy of existing and future residents. And when people extend and put in bifold doors, it can feel as if they're in the neighbour's back garden in terms of noise intrusion. This would cause significant harm to the immediate neighbour. Precedent is a big issue in this road because of 31 and 33 and the others that have been mentioned by the planning officer. Errors of taste have indeed been committed in the past, but they were perpetrated before our excellent design guide came into being, a supplementary planning document. Neighbours are worried that large dormers and backyard bungalows will now be built all the way up Blackhouse Lane, which is just above where number 33 is. There is a public sewer which passes through the middle of all these back gardens. Some people claimed not to know about it when they were extending, but the applicant knows about it because he connected his bungalow to it when he built that in 2022. What happened with number 31 was that they asked for an overbuild agreement over the sewer when they discovered it, and were able then to elongate their extension by 2 more metres to avoid the sewer. So it is important in this case to ensure that 5 metres doesn't become 7. The obvious solution, which would be supported by the immediate neighbour herself, is to maintain the aesthetic and architectural coherence of the neighbourhood, to make the front and back dormer match the other side of the semi, and the rear 5 metre extension should be 3 metres so that it would be in line with 29s, because we hear it is the same height as 29s, but it's not the same length. And there should be a 30 centimetre gap between the boundary and the new extension. The resident of 29 has been living in a building site between these 2 properties for 7 years with all the noise, dust and ugliness, and she just wants it to end. She's not against extensions, obviously she's done one herself, but she wants the extension to be done in one hit, as it were, and to be a reasonable size. Finally, it's not fair to anyone when an applicant is led to believe they can start work at a certain date before the application has been approved. This is not managing the applicant's expectations, and it has led to a complaint being lodged with the Ombudsman. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. To speak, Mr. King first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just on one point, mention's been made by speakers about the Party Wall Act, but that isn't a relevant matter for this planning committee. We're here to assess the planning merits of the application against the development plan and national government guidance. Party Wall Act is separate legislation that sits outside of planning and outside of building regulations, so it's not a matter for this committee, the Party Wall Act. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I didn't actually make notes as we went along, but I can refer back to the design principles that were mentioned. Design Principle 49, which states that extension should respond to the design of the original dwelling and should be well integrated with the scale and form of the original dwelling, allowing the original building to remain the dominant element of the property. So I have addressed the design element, in my report, in section 12 of my report. And without repeating what I've said, the extension is set well back from the principal elevation. It is 7.5 metres back from the principal elevation, and it leaves space approximately 1 metre to the side to gain access to the rear of the property. The extension in terms of it being comparable with that at number 31, this is 5 metres deep from the rear extension. The extension at number 31 is actually 5.75 metres deep. It was extended further to go beyond the pipe work. So this is actually of less depth, and it's of less width to the side as well of the existing dwelling than that at number 31. It is also lower in height than the extension at number 31. This is a maximum of 3 metres in height to the ridge. The extension at number 31 is 3.3 metres. So, and I think you can see from the drawing that I've actually put up on the screen that the extension is built up to the boundary, but not to encroach on the land of the adjoining property, which you can actually do under permitted development in terms of building up to the boundary, provided you leave enough space for overhanging of guttering so that it doesn't overhang, and foundations laid so it doesn't encroach on the land of the adjoining property. In terms of the dormer windows, these are also referred to in the design guide, and they have been referenced in my report as well at 12.7, which refers to a loft conversion is a space-efficient means of extending the amount of living accommodation in a dwelling. and it's normally reliant upon dormer windows and roof lights to provide light and ventilation. And it talks about the roof pitch and form are intrinsic to a building's character, and roof extensions should be sensitive to this. Roof extensions and dormer windows that alter the existing ridge of the roof or significantly alter the roof profile of a building will not normally be acceptable, particularly on the front roof slope. And here, the profile of the roof, the pitch, is not being altered and the ridge is not being altered. And the dormer window, in terms of its proportions, is actually, as I said before, to match number 31, and there are other dormer windows on the front elevations in the immediate vicinity which are actually larger than what's being proposed here. I think that's all, Chairman.
I have two questions, because two questions have come up in one of the speakers and in the objections. The garage. There's never been a garage. Well, it was removed a long time ago.
The garage has been removed.
Yeah, thought as
Yeah,
much.
so there's no longer a garage in situ. The other point that I've just remembered that was mentioned was with regards to the annex. The annex doesn't form part of this application. It's not for consideration. And in terms of amenity, this has been addressed in my report at 12.36. And actually, for a bungalow, albeit a chalet bungalow, which is what's before us and being proposed, it would actually retain, as I've said, a length of 11 metres and a width of 9.7 metres, which is more than adequate for a property within the built-up residential area.
And also, could you just answer the question of overshadowing and loss of daylight and sunlight? Because I can't work out the loss of sunlight.
Okay.
Because as far as I know, it rises in the east and sets in the west.
It does. It rises in the east and sets in the west. Let me just get the location plan. So that might be helpful. So there are two tests under the BRE standards that assess overshadowing of an extension. And the first test is on plan form, and it involves taking a 45-degree splay from the midpoint of the ground floor nearest window at the adjoining property. And if the proposed extension cuts through that 45-degree splay, then it would result in some overshadowing. And then you can apply a second rule of thumb, which assesses the vertical impact. In this case, it did not cut through. The midpoint was taken from the rear of the existing extension at number 29. It did not cut through that 45-degree splay. But nevertheless, even if the vertical test was applied to this, which, because there are patio doors there, you can assess it from the midpoint where it's a floor-to-ceiling window, such as a patio door, a point 1.6 metres above the ground on the centre line of the window may be used, and the proposed extension does not cut through that 45-degree splay, so there would be no significant harm resulting from overshadowing. And the other point to note, which I can show you on my photos, is that in this middle photograph, you can see that is the highest point of the proposed extension, and it will be the same as what is existing at the adjoining property. So there will be no overshadowing. It will come out further, but you've got existing planting, which is in excess of both extensions, and you've got fencing along here as well. So there will be no significant harm resulting from overshadowing, loss of daylight or loss of sunlight. And also, take on board, I'm just going to show you go back to the location plan. So, as Councillor Marsh has just pointed out, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So if the extension is here, then you wouldn't get a significant amount of harm resulting from overshadowing as a result of the orientation of the buildings as well.
That's it.
Is it? Thank you very much.
I just wanted those clarified, just in case they come into the debate. Councillor Henwood, you're very quick on the mark.
Could we go back to that diagram where you showed the internal structure and you compared it to the neighbor. So I don't quite understand. That one, yes. The extension on the proposed is, in that diagram, is much deeper than the adjacent semi-detached bungalow.
It just said it is. But there is a big bush there where that out.
Yeah,
You
that,
answer it.
that, yes, yes,
So
please.
in terms of overshadowing,
No, I wasn't, I meant the depth that
Oh.
it goes out.
yes, it does, and I've referenced that in my report. It is bigger. This is 5 metres.
It is bigger.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
Okay.
this one measures approximately 2.6, I think I've said in my report.
okay. So I find it difficult. I know in your report, you said the side extension and the back extension were all right. They were still subservient to the main bungalow, to the semi-detached. But by the time I add that that side extension, the roof extension with 3 bedrooms and a bathroom, I don't see how it complies with design guide 49, which says extensions should normally be designed to be well integrated with the existing scale, form, and massing, allowing the original building to remain the dominant element. I don't see how the original, it's a semi-detached bungalow, how it still remains dominant when all this extra extensions and the roof extension occur. How can we, in your judgment, a semi-detached is still going to be dominant even though we have all this building extra adding on?
So to answer your question, to assess it in terms of the visual impact and harm on the street scene and the character, if you stand at the front of the property and you also look at number 31 as well, I'm just going to move it on to the street scene so you can see. So you can see this is the extension here of the roof. This is the roof enlargement here, and this is the proposed rear extension. It's single storey, it's set well back from the principal elevation, which is the front elevation, and it is not, you can see that the existing profile of the dwelling remains dominant. This is subservient by reason of its form, bulk and proportions and its siting. It's set back, it's set down from the main ridge of the existing dwelling. The dormer window maintains the maximum area of sloping plane of the roof around it, so that's uninterrupted. So, and in terms of design of dormer windows, it's always the case that dormer windows should ideally be smaller. The size of the window should ideally be smaller than the window it sits above. So it is smaller, and the cheeks are proportionate either side of the window. It's set down from the ridge line as well, which makes it subservient. It makes it, it's not dominating the profile of the roof, and therefore it is integral and it is subservient.
So it's more, excuse me, Chairman, it's more to do with the visual, what you actually see, rather than everything going on inside, basically. Thank you.
Interested in the inside. We're looking at the street scene, and that's what the members of the public will see when it's finally built. They'll see 27 pretty much exactly the same as 31. And it's not quite a mirror image of the next door one as well. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor de Bell. No, I'm taking Councillor de Bell
I
first.
think Councillor Brown was. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry, Chairman. I got a bit carried away there. I totally understand the excellent work that's been done by the officers to look through this and check it all out very, very carefully. But I have huge sympathy with the people that are objecting to this. Throughout this area, particularly as I know, there are bungalows disappearing all the time. And people say, well, you know, it's a growing family and we've got to change. So they put 3 bedrooms upstairs and all of a sudden something's totally different. Is it legal? Yes. does it meet planning requirements? Yes. In my opinion, is it always right? Not necessarily, because the more of these bungalows that disappear, later on when people desperately need these for themselves, they just aren't around anymore. So I've got huge sympathy with the lady and the other people who are objecting to this. But as we know, planning requirements are the main thing, and you obviously followed this extremely well. But they've even built another, which we can't mention. They've even built another room down in the garden somewhere.
That's for the mother.
It's just the whole thing's sort of grown up like Topsy, and I just feel great sympathy for the people that are having this. But it is legal. It meets planning regulations, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. As you said, we're not talking about that one. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. I'm just interested in the sheer mass of the extension at the rear, and I noticed that it's deeper than the adjoining extension at number 27, the adjoining part of the semi-detached bungalow, and it just strikes me, where do you stop? You've got this large flat roof and this extension going into the rear garden, or what's left of it. Is there some mechanism where that could stop? So that's my first question. The second one is, I too am very concerned about the neighbourhood, because we seem to be hanging our hats on what's happened at number 31. And since then, I hear that, well, we've got the design guide and design guide 49, I can see that the architect has tried to comply with that. But if this continued, and every house in this road did this, then the whole neighbourhood would be completely changed. I visited Noel Rise for the first time, and I mean, that brings me to my third point, and that is there something in the National Planning Policy framework that recognises the actual street scene and the environment and the neighbourhood, and that gives it some type of protection, because you could end up easily with 3 cars here, and you have a job to park 2, so one's on the road, and so that puts even more pressure on the garage is long since gone. It puts more pressure on the neighbourhood. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Just asked, as you asked the questions, I was asking Mr. King the answers. As this has gone further than what would be normally permitted development, any future, if they did come back, I'm saying if, not saying they will, but if, they have to have an application, because it's gone beyond what would be normally acceptable in permitted development. Do you want to, or are you quite happy to answer any other one? No? There is something about townscape design where it's a regulation where it does allow that, and we can't actually stop anybody putting an application in if they want to change their bungalow to this either. I know it's highly desirable to keep bungalows because we have an ageing population, but if people want to put an application in, they put an application, and as long as it gets through the planning process, then so be it, that's what happens. Yeah, you can come back.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's not the bungalow and the additional space in the roof that I'm concerned about. It's just the because after all, those bungalows were built without a dormer, and many of them have had dormers, not all of them. This one hasn't so far at the front, and they're fine. It's just so I'm not against not against bungalows being extended upwards. It's just the sheer mass of this one. Thank you.
Okay, no problem, thank you. I have no other speaker. Councillor Hitchcock, late.
Could I just ask the officer, if they were put in separately, would this rear extension and the rear dormer comprise permitted development? The dormer possibly would.
The rear extension is 5 metres deep, so they would have to put an application in under a large extension application. And then we would assess the impact, residential amenity impact. The rear dormer window, they couldn't do under permitted development as it's designed because the side of the roof is being extended from a hipped roof into a gable with a barn hip.
Yeah.
If they already had a gable, then they could do the volume of the rear dormer.
I'm just thinking of a possible
under permitted
sequence of development.
So they could do a rear dormer with a hipped roof as it is, but the rear dormer would be smaller because the roof would be hipped, and they could do that under permitted development. They couldn't do the front dormer, obviously, without under permitted development.
Okay, thank you.
Learning everything, that's what we're here for, to learn. Right, no more speakers. Can we go to the voting, please? Can I have a proposer? Anybody from Burgess want to propose it? Right, Councillor Hitchcock to oppose. The seconder? Councillor Casella. We have a proposer and a seconder. Can we vote in the normal way? Green if you like it, red if you don't, and yellow if you abstain. 5, 8, 9. One person hasn't voted. As we have now. Okay, we'd better read this one out. We have 5 in favour, 2 against, and 3 have abstained, so that has been approved. That application has been approved. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. There will be a slight delay while Anna, our next planning officer, takes the hot seat, and that is my piece of paper. Anna, what did I say? It was Anna, wasn't it? What was that? I did say Anna, yeah. I'm just trying to get the, this is in Linfield. This is page 61, DM 231909, Hickman's Lane, Pavilion at Linfield. Where's it gone? Oh, there it is, 61. And again, this is only here because Mid Sussex District Council own the land and own the pavilion. Anna, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I will alert members' attention to the update sheet for this report. And in particular, there are some additional comments. There's been some further clarification on the use from the Estates Department, which I notice is actually partly in the report, but they do confirm that no electric vehicle charges are being allowed for in this development scheme, and nor any rainwater harvesting, should that question be amongst members' thoughts. We also have the environmental protection comments now, which are reported in full here. There is a recommendation for some conditions, a construction hour condition, which is as noted at number 5 in the report, a deliveries condition as in the report at number 6. And then there is further comments regarding noise issues and how to handle that. There's mention about
closing windows between certain hours and only allowing access and egress, and what to do when recorded music is being played. So the recommendation is to add a condition number 8 to the report, which actually requires a noise management plan to be approved in writing by the local planning authority. And I think that way we can handle the questions of how best to deal with those sort of events. And lastly, we have West Sussex County Council Highways have now commented. The result of their comments is that they have no transport grounds to resist the proposal. So turning to the overheads. This is the site before us. We're looking at the site owned by Mid Sussex District Council as a whole, the recreation ground including the cricket ground and football pitches, and Hickman's Lane Pavilion is within the centre, running sort of roughly north to south, and the proposed extension is at the southern end of the building. Just for members' information, in terms of neighbouring properties, and it is mentioned in the report, the building itself is about 50 metres from the nearest property at 12 Pickers Green and over 80 metres from the next nearest property at number 1 Hickman's Lane. This slide shows the footprint of the existing building and the car park layout, which is access off Hickman's Lane, and access to the building is from the northern end, also from the eastern side, and the extension being placed to the south end of the building over an area currently in use as a children's play area. This is the existing layout of the building, so it has a social area within the middle and changing rooms around, a small kitchen and access from the car park at the north end. And it's a fairly simple looking building, gable-ended, with a brick finish and a gabled roof, tiled gabled roof. And the proposed extension is a sort of T-shape at the southern end, adding on an additional area to include a social area with a lobby, a slightly larger kitchen and accessible toilets, and a storeroom accessible from the outside, with a terrace area 4 metres deep by the width of the building, with a perimeter pathway and a new play area located on the western side of the building. And this slide just shows the proposed elevations. Obviously it's a modern flat roof with a parapet roof, brick built to match the existing brickwork. It includes some bifold doors in the southern elevation, some sliding doors in the east elevation, 4 external light fittings and a link section with doorways to allow access into that area. So these photographs just show the building as it is right now. The proposal includes some rendering on the northern end and some alterations to the doorways to make it more accessible for everybody from the car park end. And these photographs also illustrate that there are these large trees, large oak trees growing at the rear of the building, and where in terms of the new play area there's some proposed condition to ensure their protection during the course of the works. So finally, the recommendation is at the end of the report, and that it should be, the application should be approved subject to that additional condition 8 as referred to in the update sheet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Anna. You saw in the update sheet about the additional EV points. I was cheekily asked Anna on our talk through on this of whether it was part of the proposal. I understand that Hickman's Lane is actually down for EV under the West Sussex County Council rollout. And to be fair, because it's coming away from the car park, I just cheekily asked the EV points. It is a shame that they haven't decided to include grey water harvesting, but I think that's for the ruling party to put pressure on the executive on that one. So I don't think we can answer that question tonight. We have had it, though, Councillor DeBell, myself, Councillor Brown, I think we're the only three from the previous. We had this not so long ago, did we, in the previous? And the only you weren't here with this one, no. The only reason it's here in front of us, it became too expensive to do the upper floor. So this is like halfway house. It's cheaper to just extend at the back. There is a need. We are modernising all our play areas and these type of community centres. And does anybody wish to speak on it? Councillor Henwood.
Could we, as a committee, support Linfield Parish Council that are suggesting and hoping that solar photovoltaics will be incorporated? It's a new build.
It's not a new build. It's an extension.
An extension that, well, an extension, it's a new building. I would like for us, a committee, to be supporting, renewable energy schemes, and it's an extension, so it's a building which is new, Chairman.
Right, that's not in front of us. Like I just said, it's for the ruling party, not that we are politics in planning, to put pressure on the executive to ask that to be included, but we can't include that tonight.
We, as a committee, we can't say we totally support and promote, encourage use of renewable energies.
Well, why wouldn't we? Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay,
but we
well,
can't.
I just meant in our minutes, can we put it, Chairman?
I might have to take legal advice on that one. I don't think we can, but the other one, the right-hand side.
Sorry, Chair. It's not part of the planning application.
No.
It could potentially go as an informative.
I think an informative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll put it in an informative if the committee are minded to put that in as a. Yeah, don't look around yet. We'll get to that stage in a minute. Now, the other thing as well, on page 63, you had a series of letters of representations. The vast majority of that is actually to be addressed in a different, like the environmental health, environmental protection teams, not planning, just in case. And obviously they moaned about the police as well. So, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I was looking for some kind of architectural statement on the environmental, on achieving DP 39, apart from the usual things with water, limited water use and that kind of thing. And I didn't find anything in the report. And so, could I have some clarification on the achieving of a DP, the environmental requirements in DP 39? I mean, it seems to me that the District Council should have a responsibility to ensure that the buildings achieve a reasonable standard. And I'm not sure that this one does, as far as I can see. Thank you.
Yeah, I think in this what it had, we did upgrade it, so I assume a lot of that's in place already. But you're right, I think we can put that in as an informative as well for the extension part of it, because we can't do a retrospective on the main building. Have I got that right, Paula? Can't do anything on the old building, but we can perhaps put an informative on the new part of it.
The old building is existing and
It
the
is.
planning application is in connection with the old building.
only the new one, isn't it?
It's in connection with the extension.
Yeah. So we could, again, put an informative in to see what we can do about that as well. Right, in the absence of anybody else wishing to speak, and the absence of any local board councillors, can I have a proposer with the two informatives that we're going to put into a proposer, please? Councillor Brown and Councillor Basher. Thank you. Can we go to the vote, please? Green for acceptance, red for against, and yellow for abstention. 3 haven't voted yet. 2, 9, 1. Yes, we're all here. That's unanimous. That has been approved with the two informatives to do with PV on the top, maybe not on the necessary on the new build part of it, and the water. Okay, thank you very much. Right, I shall now go to item 7 on the agenda. Questions pursuant to Council Rule Procedure 10.2, due notice which has been given. I have none. So therefore, I will close the meeting at 17 minutes past 5. Can you remain in situ until we find out if the live feed has died?